Okay. All right, we're going to get started. Welcome everybody that's in attendance. I am Christine Berg, President.
Julie Reno, Research Chair.
Michelle Dunn, Secretary.
Karen Taylor, Negotiations Chair.
Jim McFarland, Vice President.
Bonnie Stafford, Member Rights.
Cam Wingenbach, Business Services.
Ashley Evans, Human Resources.
Kristen Damer, Assistant Superintendent.
Cassidy Bjorklund, School Board.
Dave Marquardt, School Board.
Any concerns about the minutes? Are we ready to sign those?
I think we're ready.
Well, we're going to write our names and dates because I didn't put it on the bottom. It's very strange.
All right. So, from the papers that you have in front of you, if you would look for the one that says class size, Memorandum of Understanding class size limits. If you take a look at that document, it should look really similar to one that we've seen in the past. What I noticed is that when I went looking for policy 536.3 and procedure 536.1, I had a hard time finding them. And it's now administrative procedure 607.4. Does that look right to you?
Yeah, I would say over the last year or two, Deb has been updating those to match numbers at MSBA, which have changed significantly. So we may see
Okay.
see some of that throughout. So we'll just have to catch them
Okay.
as we go. Thank you for catching those.
Okay, yep. So then you will notice, so previously on this MOU, we had an agreement for kindergarten through 4. That was kind of what we agreed upon as sort of a starting point. So what you'll notice is that in the table, there's the addition of grades 5 and 6. And then if you go down to the section determination of class size, we added some language because the setting at Horizon West is a little different. They're organized in teams and triads. And so the language about size, like class size, refers to the average number of students in each pod or house at each grade level within the building. So rather than the total class population. And I know that administrators make an effort to balance the pods overall. So that language sort of made sense. And then on the back side, hopefully I caught the places that refer to administrative procedure. Again, under class size limit review procedure, we added a third representative in the hopes that we can have 2 from different elementaries and then 1 that would be hopefully from Horizon West to represent the 5th, 6th grade level. So that's kind of what that one is. Next, if you would look for the one that says proposal, additional license, difficult to fill positions, longevity bonus. I presented this as a memorandum of understanding. There is there's somewhat similar language in the contract that connects with those at the secondary level who teach the AP and concurrent credit coursework. But essentially, some of these difficult to fill positions, because of the salary benefits, et cetera, that come from working in the private sector. Specifically, last year, the district was not able to hire a speech language pathologist, contracted for someone, and that ended up having a price tag of $150,000. And so, unless the dollar amount has gone up, Julie was going to double check this for me, but the last I had heard, the costing for a teacher's salary benefits, if they're in the lower right, which is the most costly, was between 135 and 136,000, and that's an in-house employee. 150,000 for someone who's coming in from the outside. Even if someone is getting that $4,000 bonus, it still is less than the $150,000 price tag. And then it's someone who is with us, has been with us for a while, and hopefully means that we keep quality people here. So you can see that there's the 1 to 4 years and 5 to 9 years, the 10 to 14, and then anybody who's 15 plus.
The only question I have is I think it would be our benefit if we did something, we have to list out the positions.
Okay.
Because every time we don't list out the positions, then someone goes, I think I fit into that position.
Okay.
Right? Math is really hard this year. So I
Yep.
think, right. And
Well-
and I don't mean that I don't mean to make light of that, but it happens. It happened this year with one
Sure.
of our extended contracts. So, and I get it when it's not explicit. So,
Yeah. And we did even, I mean, like that was something we talked about in our meeting here. Like, who does that involve? And, I started going through the list, and then Christy like checked my accuracy, was there to kind of check my accuracy. But I don't think we have opposition to that. It's just the idea that and it is also based on agreement between the union and the district would identify as those positions that are hard to fill. It's also connected to MA billing because a lot of these are the people who hold, like they have to have a professional license in addition to an educator's license in order to work. So, but it's a proposal, and again, like it's proposed as an MOU, but certainly we could match it in location with that other language that's somewhat similar. So that's that one. Then if you would find the document that says discussion and request to collaborate on third-party billing. So it says at the top of this one proposal, but then you'll notice that you get to the table in the middle of it's absolutely empty.
that you gave us a worksheet.
Well, what I need to say is that we had a conversation the time before, and then you brought some data. But when I started looking at the data, it's all big group. It's the whole group. It's not any, like, I don't know what the individual average is for speech language pathologists as opposed to nurses, as opposed to OTs, PTs, etc. And so, like, I don't know where to put people. Like, I know that as far as meeting with students, SLPs are 46.8% of all of those meetings. But I don't know what that means for them as individuals. I did reach out to Steph, and just because she's been around for a long time, and she said, like, I can't estimate that. I can't even ballpark estimate that for people other than myself, like what I did on a regular basis, because she said my role is so much different from Jill Todd's role, which is so much different from um, like the EIS role, where like they're just constantly doing assessments. So I started the language what I would, and I know you can't just hand over to me MA billing information because that's private and protected and all of that. But just to sit down and look at what individual people do and see if we can find like in the large group, it looks like there are fairly obvious breaks in like how much people are doing. But again, I don't know how many SLPs there are compared with how many nurses there are compared with how many OTs, PTs, et cetera. So, and then some of them have to supervise and some of them don't have to supervise. And so it was it was too complex for me to try to figure it out with more data. So
Yeah. So trying to think who we might want to have a conversation, but what I really want to make sure from this team's perspective that it doesn't become about having to chase people down in order to get their stipends. So we have to figure the one thing about it now is, if you're eligible to bill for MA, then you get the stipend. There's no additional administration. And I think what we're finding, even in some of the language we have that we have referenced previously, like Appendix I, for example, like the administrative burden on the back end almost it's absolutely worth it for the individuals participating, but it's making it hard on a department of, 4 people essentially to try to manage it. So the one thing is we got to be really careful on like, i- is it to a point that you're submitting for it and you prove it, and who are you doing that to? So I think we got to think about that.
okay, so that's why there are some there's kind of that list at the top of the expectations. So first is that it's part of your job assignment. It's not an over and above, it's an expectation, which is something that uh, Steph said that Pat was really good about consistently reminding people this is part of your job. And then it's people who provide direct student service. They provide documentation for those services for students qualified to receive MA billing. They hold the specific license that allows them to sign the third party billing. And then they follow the procedures that are necessary that lead directly to the district receiving reimbursement. So, we had that conversation last time about people who are consistently completing the work, the documentation, and the people who were not doing it were receiving the same compensation. And then some people, it's a really time consuming part of their job, and other people it's not as much. So that was kind of the attempt of breaking it down into the table with different levels of responsibility. And again, that is based on what I could see. So maybe these increments, when we get down to individual groups and what their workload looks like, I can only see numbers based on the whole group together. So that might be another part of it that we have to like figure out.
Mhm.
And then I just left summer billing as like on our previous contract, summer billing was at $300. And like I guess I sort of think God bless the people who are willing to work with students in the summertime, and let's just keep paying them what we were paying them. So that's kind of my thought. Anyway, so this, if I were as crafty as Ashley, I would have had a big draft watermark across it. But I didn't do that. I just said, oh, I need help. I can't do this. So that's what that one's about. All right. Then, if you would look for this nice, colorful little packet of papers, and I gave this to you. It was just today that I gave it to you. But I'm going to try to kind of summarize a little bit the information that is on here. So this is the survey results. Um, can somebody who has access give it to? Okay, perfect.
I did.
Okay. Okay. So I'll try to connect what I'm saying with something that's on that table just so that you can see it. So I lumped questions 1 and 2 together. So question 1 is, have you been provided with differentiated and appropriate ongoing professional development related to your specific job duties? I should actually backtrack. I apologize. So we received the feedback that was collected at the meetings, and I took into consideration the feedback that you gave at the last meeting, which was what are we don't want to have meetings just to have meetings. So we have to ask, like, did the language in the MOU, did the work in the MOU accomplish what we hoped for it to accomplish? Because we don't want to have meetings just for the sake of having meetings. And then Christine and I started digging through the information, and what you think you're going to get and what actually happens are often two very different things. So Steph and I put the team put a lot of thought into what do we want people to talk about at those meetings, but then there were some things that were missing that were concerns that people have addressed with us at member rights or at executive board meetings, or et cetera. So we kind of asked, like, what's the information that we still need? And then we put together a Google form. And what you see on the visuals in the middle column is the result of people not thinking about what happens when you allow people to individualize their answers to questions. So if you look at question number 1, the 38, have you been provided with differentiated and appropriate ongoing professional development? The blue is yes, the red is no. And then over in the right column, there's all the individual responses, which are represented with that whole rainbow of colors that's up above. And there's a variety of information there. A lot of times what I find for myself is the individual comments lead me to a better understanding of what people working in the role are actually experiencing in the different places. So I included those just as they were, just copied and pasted them so that you can take a look at those. The second one is, what percentage of district provided PD has supported your development in providing specialized instruction, which is the focus of special education. More than 80% of the professional development I receive is directly related to specialized instruction is blue, and you can see that there's none of it that's there. Now, I would say that special education is probably not alone in this. There are probably people across the board who say, not every professional development session that I go to applies directly to me. Like that's not something that's going to be specific to special education. It's just really tough to meet everybody's needs when you need to make sure that people have information to go with initiatives and programs and new curriculum and those kinds of things. But I think what is important is that 42% of this group says that less than 25% of the professional development that they're receiving is directly related to specialized instruction as the focus of special education. I have but one of the other suggestions that you made is try to have some specific questions, and I do have those on the document that I'll share with you. So number 3 is the question is Education Moorhead understands the LSS teachers must complete both due process duties along with instructional planning during their 60 minutes of prep time. What district guidance have you received when prioritizing what can get done? 36% of those who responded said they've been directed to prioritize due process paperwork. And if you look at the narratives, there's an understanding of that. Like they understand it's the law. We get in trouble if we don't reach compliance, etc. But I also think that it represents a conflict that we're asking special educators to work through on a day-to-day basis. Again, the focus of special education is not, at least in my mind, is not supposed to be due process paperwork. Rather, it's specialized instruction. That's why kids have IEPs, is because there's a reason that they need specialized instruction in order to make progress. And if 36% of people are being told don't prioritize that, prioritize paperwork, then it sort of it diminishes their role as a teacher, as an educator, and it just, again, I think it really puts people in a situation where they're constantly conflicted about what they believe is the right thing to do, and what they know has to get done as well. Question number 4 was just if you answered other above, please explain further. It's rather lengthy, but I included those narratives because, again, I think it represents individual experiences. And I read an article in Education Week recently that said there are 2 areas where there is still significant teacher shortage. One of them is science, and one of especially advanced science connected with engineering, and then special education. And so as you read those comments, you can kind of feel people's conflict. Like people don't go into special ed unless they're passionate about that work. And a lot of what you read there is a lot of conflict and being overwhelmed and et cetera. So question number 5 is really simple and straightforward. If we were to pursue working with the district on additional prep time for LSS to complete teachers to complete due process paperwork, would you be supportive? It's not surprising that 100% said yes. So that one's pretty obvious. On the next page, question number 6, when you've notified your supervisor of a crisis situation, has support been provided in a timely manner? I love seeing that 24% of people, so, to me, that's 1 in 4. No, I didn't experience a crisis. I love that. And then also that 62% can say, yes, they were there. They were on the job. They were helping me out. I'm concerned about the 14% because if there's a crisis situation that's not responded to, in my mind, that's a danger, a potential danger to students, adults in that work environment, the culture of that education environment, et cetera. So good news there with a little concern. Question number 7, after a problem was identified and brought to the IEP team, was a long-term proactive solution implemented to prevent future incidents? Again, 24%, this doesn't even apply to me, it's not a problem. In the last year, 52% saying, yep, there was a solution. Again, the concern, the 24%, and again, I think of the 24% as close to 1 in 4 people saying, we talked about it, we put a Band-Aid over it, but we didn't really solve the long-term issue. And when we think in terms of the the student behavior teacher safety MOU, there's a part of me that wonders how much of a connection there is between those two things about people feeling that they're not safe, their students aren't safe, because there's not a long-term plan for for a crisis situation. Then things got really messy again. We probably should have had someone else write this survey. So, question number 8, how many times was your supervisor in your classroom while students were present? That's pretty straightforward information. There were some compliments for some assistant principals who are showing up at the drop of a hat. They're showing up and providing support. So I included those comments specifically as a shout out to those folks. And there are, in some cases, there's not a supervisor coming in. Many of the higher numbers, so multiple times that a supervisor was in the room, those are directly connected with it being an evaluation year for the teacher. And I just think in terms of culture and developing relationships, which we all know the importance of student to student, but also adult to adult. If there's not a presence, is there an understanding of what the teacher is experiencing and what students are experiencing, what paras are experiencing in that space? And is there an understanding of the workload, the expectations, et cetera? So that is number 8. Questions 9, 10, and 11. If you flip to the next page, those are in a completely different order, which is why I highlighted that row. So question 9, how many students were added to your caseload over the last school year? And you can see that the numbers vary a great deal. I want to point out that the really high number said, I don't work in a typical classroom setting. So having 22 added that's not a huge deal. That's not not something that should be alarming. And then again, in some cases, more, but with built-in assistance for workload. Question number 10, if students were added to your caseload over the course of the school year, were additional support provided, like an additional para, a co-teacher, shifts in caseload, and et cetera. And again, there's a lot of narrative that is included. I sort of think of this as like what's important to people, they invest time in. And so I want to honor those comments that were included from people because I think it's important. In some cases, people are problem solving issues like this on their own. Like they don't. There's one comment here where they just said our facilitator did a nice job of trying to balance out our caseloads. In another case, there's a team worked together and just made adjustments as they went. So people are finding resources in their colleagues and et cetera. Whether that's a good or bad thing might be a conversation. And then finally, how many students on your caseload were dismissed from LSS services this last year? And there are some low numbers that are included there, except for possibly for speech language. And there were 5 seniors that graduated from one program. And I guess I don't have research to back this up, but in my head went to, if it is not a priority for people to plan specialized instruction, engaging instruction, how would we expect students to make the kind of progress that we would really love to see, especially for for some of our specific groups? For what it's worth, I'll share, as I said, all of that as well as the questions on a document, potential asks, and you said like, what are our asks? And I tried to break this down to 3. So one of them is, Kristen and I had a conversation that like right now we're not in a position to hire additional people. And so, and in order to give people due process work time on a, you work 4 days and you have 1 day to work on due process paperwork, or you have an extra prep time during the contract day, like that would require hiring additional staff, or it requires already large caseloads to get even larger for part of the day. Not really a good possibility. So our proposal, and this, I should say, this will not be popular with all of the people that it affects, because they have strong feelings about this. But our proposal, or our potential ask, would be that all conference times, daytime, nighttime, become due process work time or trade time. If people have all of their paperwork up to date, there's no expectation that they attend conferences. That's the trade time for, if you read through the narrative, you see there are tons of people who are working nights and weekends, and they're using all of their prep time, so they're doing instructional planning at home as well. And then that goes on to say, if building leadership or program leadership wants them present during conference times, they'll need to request that they attend, not require, but request that they attend, and then compensate them at their contractual rate of pay for that time. Ask number 2, the executive director, together with program managers and others who are providing support, need to develop a professional development plan for the 25-26 and 26-27 school years, to include quality professional development opportunities specific to LSS educators, and collect feedback so that they know what people need. Like there were some people who said, like, I've gotten all kinds of professional development on reading. And we know, like, they're in phase 1 on the READ Act. They have to receive letters training. That's not a choice that any of us can make. But what I really need is some professional development on behavior management. Like that's what I'm really struggling with, and I haven't received any of that. So collect some information from people about what they really need, so that they have some priorities for that plan.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Is there value? Is there value in making that committee work? I think part of the issue becomes like, I may think I know what you need. I don't always know what you need, and I need some feedback on that. And so I think, there's some aspect of, having the time and being able to plan it, and that we know elementary, middle, high school, all different, all the disciplines are different. And so along with some of the facilitators and staff, maybe that's something that needs to be looked at a little differently.
Well-
I might suggest, because
And maybe that would make sense if you go down to item number 3. It requests some established timelines, expectations and check-ins or accountability, and the formation of a standing work group. And the work group would include district leadership. So I put on there, I just wrote down like Dwayne and Brandon, and I only put Brandon on there because I know he was already working with a work group that he had sort of invited people into. But program manager, at least one program manager probably would be important to include them at various levels, EM leadership, and LSS educators who represent various programs and age groups. Because as you say, it is absolutely different. We all know that. What's that?
Who's the last?
Oh, LSS educators who represent various programs and age groups is what I said. So, and then, so we're with you on that. That's a solid idea. Input is always good. And then under the
Have this remember, referring to this document.
that's right. Thank you, Michelle. Yeah. Okay. So then it's on the document that you'll receive. But then it also some concerns that people had. So the executive director, together with program managers, others providing support, need to work on developing and providing training on systems for the following. And I don't even know if there are systems. So like that might be work that could also be done by the standing committee. But people specifically responsive or specifically talked about crisis response. Sometimes there does not seem to be a set plan. And so when a crisis comes up, everybody just kind of like goes their own way. There's not order to it. Intake and transitions. And that's for a system and a process for students, but also for adults. So if my training and my experience is as an SLD teacher, and I get moved into a profound DCD teaching area, oh my gosh, the learning curve is completely overwhelming. So what's the process for intentionally preparing people for that transition? Classroom observations of all educators while they're working with students to provide ongoing guidance, quality feedback on instructional strategies and behavior management, guidance and support for workload management, both the what and the how. I feel like people know these are all the balls that I'm supposed to keep in the air. What's missing for them is how in the world do I do this? And it may be that they're not familiar with all the resources. It may be that they're unfamiliar with processes, whatever it is. But so, and again, like I don't have a proposal because this is a ton, and I think it probably makes sense to have a conversation with folks who are living in that world. But this is feedback. We did have a response. We had 50 people respond on the survey.
She
We were
definitely knew
just-
what I was going to ask.
we had 50 people who responded. Yeah, absolutely.
Did you have data on like which schools they're in?
We did have that data. I didn't put it on here, but we did have respondents, all groups E12.
Okay. Is there any way we could get the data on the specific schools?
Absolutely. If Kristen reminds me, or Michelle remind me, then I can try to break that down and hand it your way. I'm going to ask for your forgiveness. Can we go back really briefly to the class size document? That was the first one that we took a look at. While we were meeting today, this is again why it's so valuable to have some elementary representatives on the team. But there was mention, like there's nothing on this table that refers to combination classes, which sometimes happens, so I think specifically in Spanish immersion, sometimes there's not enough for a whole new section. So there's a combination first and second grade class. And you don't have to answer this right at the table, but later on, in a situation like that, would the typical response be to follow the numbers for the smaller class? Like, so say you do a combination of first and second grade, would the plan be to follow the guidelines for first graders to honor the learning that they're doing at that level? And maybe that's a situation that's come up in the past.
Yep. I will tell you, principals really, really dislike that practice. So we haven't done it in a while. Even when I suggest it, they don't talk to me for a little while. And generally, Generally, you're not going to see a combination class below grade 2. So Spanish immersion, I've seen 2, 3, and I've seen 3, 4. I would say 3, 4. You might we might err towards upwards of 29 because it's Spanish immersion. At the same time, where I've seen fourth grade, just because you only have 2 classes, that's where you tend to have extra support. But I think Spanish immersion is the only one that we've had in a while, and I think they were under class size. They were smaller size, and that was one of the years that we lost a teacher mid-year, and we were able to shift everyone within class size, which is not great, but worked at the time. So at that time, I think that was a second, third grade classroom, and they were on the low end, so they would have been 27 and below. But generally, I don't know that a principal would let me suggest a grade 1, 2. I think I'd have to hide for a while. So it hasn't happened in a while. Spanish immersion, I think, is it in the last 5 years.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
And thanks for catching up with my memory.
Yeah.
All right, that's what we had today.
Okay. So our team just has some 2 answers on a couple of things we've discussed already. One being Article 36, deferred compensation. So this, we'd like to hold on the one we provided. I know there were some differences in some of that language, but that would be Article 36 remaining as the deferred compensation plan. And then looking at striking Article G, which is teacher transfer, and making it this teacher master agreement, the early retirement, since it's one person. And I would suspect, within the next 2 contracts, we'd likely be striking that entirely. And I think we talked about last time about student loan, and we are 100% on board. We don't necessarily want to put it in contract. I've reached out again to our third party administrator to see, how we get it rolling. Essentially, there's 2 options that they presented to us earlier this year, and one would be where the student loan processor can send it in. The other is just verifying with your district or your employer that you've paid your student loan. So then, part of it goes into the 403B and part of it goes for your student loan, so you're still saving that match. So our intention is to implement. We're just in the logistics process. Yeah, I think that was the only difference here. Right.
Kristen, can I ask you a question?
Yes, ma'am.
On the 3rd page of this document,
Mhm.
which is under Article 36, under subdivision 4, when it talks about accumulated sick leave, is that, it says 100 days? Is that something we want to move to hours?
It's one person, so we can, but we're really looking at how many sick days and not hours, but I don't know that it would matter.
Okay.
Yeah. We addressed this a little bit in the next one as well, which is Article 38, leave due to sickness and emergency. This is our counter to what was presented before or previously by your group. And so I didn't just, when we looked at the language, we didn't strike or add. We're just presenting new language. We can do it different ways depending on what's helpful. All of it is posted under our Google Sites as well, but if we need a better way of tracking, we can talk about that. This one in particular, page 1 was paid family medical leave. So there, I think were previously 4, A, B, C, and D, and one was specific to payroll deductions, and the statute mandates how that's paid. So we don't want to put it in contract. And then C is coordination. So A is the statutory authority. What is the statute? B is the notification to employer, and C is the coordination of sick leave, so that we can ask people to offset with their existing leave if they choose to, but we can't make them. So that's all statutory language. But some of that, I think you write a sometimes fine line of just addressing the statute, which people generally don't look up unless you're in HR or leadership. And just providing the information so people have that. Some of that specific to family medical leave, it might be in our best interest to put all of that under one section, and we didn't really get into that. So might be better to push it to subdivision 6 and push bereavement, so family medical leave and paid family medical leave are together, or both under the same subdivision. And just as an FYI, your HR department, myself included, are still trying to figure out how we're going to manage all of those pieces together. Not necessarily the law, but trying to manage what's federal and what's state and how they really don't mesh. So that's just an informational piece. I don't know how many people have been paying attention to it.
I was thinking as we were learning about it, it's not bad. In my mind, it's not a bad thing that it starts January 1st, rather than it being part of the chaos of the beginning of a school year. So at least we have a little time before it.
We a little bit. Do you have something you'd like to say?
No, just because say if someone's gonna have a child at the beginning of the year, they can request for it at 2 months prior, but we don't even know yet from the state how to manage it yet. So then we don't necessarily have all the answers.
Bear with us. All right. Yeah. So that is the first page, parental leave for teachers. Subdivision 5, we are requesting that we leave the statute in. It's been applied for many years. I think we've occasionally run across some concerns with the time or people not knowing, but generally I think between the employee and the HR side, we've worked through that. So it is 16 hours annually of leave. So reference the statute and that 16 hours so people are aware it's there. Personal leave, we talked about.
Can
Yeah.
I? So is part of our goal was to provide people with a way to have that be paid leave. Would that be like personal leave in order to have that?
Generally, they have to take it as personal leave, and then it allows for deduct if that leave isn't available.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would people be able to use like trade time?
Yeah, I think we really have to dig into Appendix I and talk about how to do that in general. But I mean, yes, we've generally applied that as
Okay.
personal leave, so you could utilize that for personal leave. I think we just have to look at that and how it's working and how we administer it. And
Okay.
I will say, Ashley and I talked a little bit about it today, just since we're referencing it and trying to figure out how to, again, like previous talk, how do you make it easier to administer? How do you make it so, like Michelle doesn't say I subbed in November and I never got paid for it, and then you're trying to backtrack because there's too many hands involved, and then trying to figure out the personal leave aspect of it. So that would be one thing I'd challenge us all to try to think a little differently about and see if we can do it differently to make it easier for everyone involved.
Okay.
More heads are better than just one or two, right? Sometimes in small pockets, so we can then all come back together as opposed to all of us at once. Yeah. Personal leave. So we are requesting or asking that it stay at the 5%, but did include that the positions not requiring a substitute would not be included in calculating the site percentage.
Can I ask a clarifying question? Are those positions not requiring a substitute? Let's say that would put the number over 5%, but they don't need a substitute. Would they qualify as well? Can they take personal leave if 5% have already taken or have already put in for it because they don't need a sub?
If I'm an instructional coach and I'm at the high school and your 5% is reached, if I don't count as a part of that 5%. So I think you're asking if the 5% has already been reached, would we still allow them to take their time? That is probably something we haven't thought about. Yeah. Yeah. It's a good question. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Well, I guess I'm wondering what would be the difference if if a person, if the instructional coach got a day, but they don't count, and then a person after that got to the 5%, or if the timing was it that they got to the 5%, and then isn't it the same?
Yeah, in theory, I agree. I don't know that it matters, but it really, I guess if people are okay with the inequity, because now you have to ask for a day off in September, and if I'm an instructional coach, I can ask on Friday morning. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think usually those people are not able to
No, I know that.
sub for trade time either. So I view that as
Yeah,
a fair
that's true.
exchange.
The instructional coaches are not supposed to sub.
Counselors or
Counselors actually can. if they establish a prep time. That's part of Appendix I, which maybe that's the part that Kristen is saying we have
It's
to
more the
change.
it's more the tracking part that's tough, I think.
Yeah.
But, so yes, I mean, in theory, I don't know that you can have it one way without having the other, and we have to be okay with that. That might be a question for you more than it is for us. Because once we put them in as not like if you can do that within the system, which I'm guessing you can, but I don't know the ins and outs, um, it just is what it is. It has to be approved within what the contract allows, and so we are also going to request that we change leave throughout the contract to account for the MOU 1 hour leave so that we don't bring back the MOU and we just change permanently to 1 hour leave. And that in reference, we take references out to full and a half day. Specifically from the HR side for Red Rover, that causes some of our confusion. And I think as we got to the end of the year this year, we kind of had some people go, oh, hey, wait a minute. You know, yes, I may have worked 3 hours and 29 minutes and rolled down the 3 hours, but I also worked 3 hours and 32 minutes and rolled up to 4 hours. And granted, it's gonna equal out. But I think that particular aspect of Red Rover causes some confusion. Maybe not full day, right? If you know you're taking a full day, you're taking a full day, but the half day. And we've also talked a little bit since we talked about conferences, you know, what does that look like? And if we're going to continue to do an hour, maybe that has to look like 3 hours and 30 minutes so people aren't losing 4 hours. Those are just nuances of the system. But if people are okay with doing it on the 1 hour increments, we also talked a little bit about, you know, do you go less than 1 hour? I think the issue becomes for substitutes. You know, if I can put in 20 minutes and I mean, you could say, you know, you can't request a sub for anything less than an hour, but that requires then managing 600 people to do that, which isn't always the easiest thing to do. So that would be our start, is just to take that out.
That would also be a challenge at Horizon, where, say, for instance, someone is asked to sub for a teacher so that they can go to an IEP meeting. It's a 43-minute class period, so
That wouldn't work. Yeah. Okay. Any questions on that? Not right now. I fully expect the next one is continues to be a working document. So we've still got 2 MOUs out, one on flex time, one on PLC. This does not combine the two. We could combine the two. It combines aspects of the two. And why we present this today is there was a meeting specific to instructional and looking at PLCs and looking at this FlexTime MOU and how to better identify what that looks like within the scope of the hours, and again try to create some equity. And you know, to Jim's point, that's hard to do because you all do very different jobs at different levels and different disciplines, and that can just create some, you know, some natural inequity. I don't know how else to say it, but there's 2 pages here, and so some of your leaders in the teaching and learning department got together and just kind of identified days, not only for PLC but MTSS meetings, which have been running, I believe, by choice. If I want to go over my prep time and 4th grade has all the same prep time, then I have the choice to do that. So they identified that within these times. Initially, I think it was 45 minutes. I requested and am presenting to back that off to 40 minutes for the PLC time. So K4 PLC, essentially running from 2:45 to 3:40 on the identified dates, with the ability to flex those within your prep time if you choose. And then 5/8 PLC time, 7:50 to 8:45. And of course, some of that is existing contract time that's just allowing for more time. And then a 9/12 PLC time from 7:30 to 8:25. And that's 30 minutes of time from this time. And all of those are laid out. And I think to those of you at the meeting, there were 2 extra meetings in 9/12. And again, K8 was 45 minutes. But in my discussion with Jeremy, we talked about, I believed it was important to have a minimum of a half day on June 2nd. Some people do need that time, whether they're checking out of their classroom or what that looks like. And I think, you know, next year we can be more cognizant in the calendar of those last 2 days, which I know we've talked about a lot. So Briefly touched on some flex day. What does that look like, right? All Kate is that 3.5, and that's really June, that June 2nd date. And all 9/12 is 3 hours and 25 or 3.25. And then special education only. So this was the start of, I think, what you asked for previously, which was the equivalent of an additional half day, 3.37 hours. Although I think we'll have a conversation about your request around special ed. Again, this is just a starting off point. I suspect more will come back. But this is how we synthesized what came out of that meeting in trying to do everything that we've discussed.
Okay. I just want to clarify, just to make sure there's an understanding. So there's flexibility. So the expectation is that for elementary that um, everyone is there until the end of day. So the did you say 3:40 time?
2:45 to 3:40. Yep.
Yep. So even if you meet during your prep time, the expectation is it's contract time. You need to stay. And that's when if you met during your personal prep time, then that time at the end of the day would become personal prep time, like a replacement for the personal prep time. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Uh, we maybe, if that is a preference. I know I talked about it with Jeremy with both, and I know there's some concern about, and I don't know, I didn't see, we didn't see the elementary data in particular, but it was my understanding that I think there was more that liked to meet on their prep time than not, but there was some, some
So
conflict with.
I think there are specifically, I think it was specifically kindergarten and first grade who just said, like, I don't want to meet during the day. I just need an opportunity to take a breath and get ready for what's next. But the other concern is that we don't want to. If people are working, we want to maintain the integrity of personal prep time. And so it needs to be at some point during that day. So if you're doing your PLC meeting during your personal prep time, then your personal prep time moves to the end of the day. So the expectation is for everyone that you stay for what the calendar day or what the contract day looks like on that day in order to meet the requirements for the flex time. But there's a flexibility to decide if it works better for your team to meet during your prep time and then your personal prep time is at the end of the day or vice versa.
Can you specify under number 3A, it says these days will be scheduled. Are you referring to the early outs?
Yeah, for this year, sometimes the problem with doing such a specific calendar, as I think we see with the ALC, is you have to meet again once the other calendar is done to then redo your days and sign off on them for next year. But yes, that would be the intent. And that could be clearer, but again, this is just trying to synthesize what came out of that meeting.
I have one more question. Can I ask one more question? And this is strictly, I guess I don't know how it works. So if our contract states what our contracted start and end times are, does an MOU changing a day technically override that? Yes, legally? Okay.
Yeah. Well, and you could make reference here to that specific article within the contract to state that it's in cooperation of or something. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a little bit similar to this MOU establishes an alternate schedule in the same way, or a departure from schedule in the same way that the ALC MOU establishes their alternate schedule.
Okay, so I'm just looking okay, so it says 17.25 hours. And so can you just speak to if we change the time to these before or after school, then where's the flip side of that? Because then we don't have to actually document the flex time because it's built in. Okay, and then what would be the time that would be compensated for then?
The early outs. And so there's 5 early outs, that's 10 hours. There's 3.25 for the high school, 3.5 for K-8. Those are technically flex hours on June 2nd. And I have a whole spreadsheet and I might have to answer that other portion
Okay.
at another time.
Okay.
But I can come back for sure with that. But that is, it's mainly the early outs. And I'm trying to, I think it's, so, I mean, in reality, that full last day of June 2nd is a flex day. So I'll be clear.
What about June 1st then? What was that?
Oh, is June 1st the Monday?
Yeah.
Then it's just a typo.
Oh,
Oh, so
Oh.
when I'm typing June 2nd, you're meeting June 1st.
Yes, ma'am.
that clears up so much. Thank you.
Typos are easy fixes.
Some days.
Yes.
I just have a clarifying question as well. So if teachers do their PLC during their prep, you're wanting them to still stay till 3:40?
So I think part of what's been a challenge in the past is that there has been a significant discrepancy in expectations based on buildings, administrative preference, et cetera. And so part of what just as an example, in one building, someone may have been able to flex grading a test, when in fact the language in our previous MOU said that what was flexed was supposed to be collaborative work. So unless you're doing, like you're doing common grading to make sure that across sections, that the point award is the same, or something like that. Like sometimes you do common grading just to see, to check your accuracy going across teachers who teach the same content and are giving a common assessment. But the idea is that one of the concerns was we want to hold the integrity of personal prep time. So if people are if they're accessing flex time in the middle of the day during their personal prep time because their group agrees to do that, then they should also stay and complete their personal prep time at the end of the day. What we also want to do is make sure that people are not just leaving when they're supposed to be meeting with their PLC. If there's a common start time and a common end time to the contract day, whether it's the regular contract day or the MOU day, then administrators can hold that expectation for everyone. Like you're in the building from this time to this time. When it's the PLC days, that changes by a half an hour, but the expectation is that you're still in the building. Does that make sense? Kind of answer your question?
It answers my question, but from my history, what in the past, it's not what we've done in the past. So I just want to clarify that's still what your want is to do that. Because when we did that, I was a teacher, you could still leave at the normal time if you did your PLC comes because you did your time at that during that. But
I think
that's what you guys want. It's fine.
what we're trying to hold people to is hold your, like you're using your personal prep time as flex time. That time at the end of the day is still contract time, which means your responsibility is to
It's
be
extended. This should be extended because the elementary, for example, goes past their 3:10 or 3:50.
right. But this MOU establishes that on PLC days,
Mhm.
nobody has to document flex time anymore. Everybody's doing their flex time on the same days. There's no need for documentation because the expectation is you're here. If you're not here, you're putting in for leave.
Yeah.
On that day, like there's an established start time and end time. It's a little bit different, and that's what the MOU is for, is saying in order to not have responsibilities and scheduled time on the early outs, you are you're in the building during your contract time on those extended days, because the exchange is you're getting that time off on the 5 early out days, and you're getting that time back on the June 1st day.
And
Yeah,
I mean, it's fine if you're interested, if that's what you guys want, that's fine. But it's just not what my experience has been in the past
Yeah.
with doing it myself. So.
Yeah, I think if I hear what you're saying is, except a teacher on those MOU days were to leave at their normal time, they're working a half hour less than others, but they still might then want to leave early on the early outs, but they haven't put in the time to get that off, and that's where some inequality could come in. So really, you need to work that extra time to get the early outs. If you don't stay on those MOU days, you don't get to leave early on early outs.
Okay. I was thinking if they work during their prep, then that's their time that they have put in to get their time off, but they have to do it
Yeah.
somewhere else. But that's, that's a teacher who did it.
So what I would
Let's clarify that that's what.
say from the HR side, from like that lens, and the fact that the professional of the teacher crew, we want to make sure we don't want to track a half an hour in Red Rover. We don't want to turn it into a more complex version of what's happened with conferences, which is always confusing, and having to do a half day if you've taken a full day. So we're going to want to be aware of that, and maybe allow some principles or some conversation about where you can be flexible if I have to get out of the building today and I've done my time, and to make sure I've done my time. So I want to be aware of that too, but like setting the expectation that it's expected that people are around because you might be needed or have to follow up or something. But we don't want to track down to the minute on those days, because that will cause more problems than not.
There was also a general response, especially at the elementary, or I should say at the K-6 level. There was the concern about the number of meetings that are being scheduled. And it's really difficult to schedule those if there's not an expectation that people are present. So, like from Courtney and Joanna and Christy's perspective, when they're trying to schedule a meeting to have a conversation with people about their data.
And they're leaving before 3:00.
Yeah.
Well, that's problematic. We should talk about that. Julie, the days are it's 10 hours of early outs, and technically it's all of June 1st, but because some of the time on June 1st is being applied to the PLCs, all that's left is the 3 1/4 and a 3.5. Does that make sense? So that's 7.25 and the 10 hours. That's where the 17.5 are coming from. But we're only tracking the 3 some hours on June 1st. Yeah.
Stop writing June 2nd.
Sorry. I'll fix that in our documents. All right, it's 3:12. Should we break, and what time do you want to connect again? Just in time to adjourn?
Try half an hour.
Yeah. Let's just plan on being back 3:45 on the dot.
Being back.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, so we're starting at 3:48. So there are a couple things I think for us are a little bit wait and see, just some comments. The proposed class size limits, the adjustment, and going into an MOU for 25-27. Team's not necessarily opposed, but we'll wait to talk about that a little bit further until we can touch base with some others as well. Additional license difficult to fill positions longevity. Again, we need to look at that a little further. We'll review and maybe we'll counter. I think from a human resources perspective, we question that will help retention. We do see potentially some value in recruitment. But you'd have to look at it as a stipend or a retention bonus, because there's some rules about bonusing and how that's written out. But that was just some of the comments we had in our time. And then Karen, I would assume you and I will kind of connect and see next steps on probably both third-party billing and then some of the shared data for special education. We're appreciative of the data. Helpful to take a look and then to have a conversation about that. We talked a little bit more about committee work in our time and what that would look like. and how some value behind a special ed specific professional development planning committee would probably be really helpful across the board. And I know there were other pieces to that as well, but some of it kind of interweaves with some of the other things we were talking about.
I another potential benefit to it that I think so with the tier 2 licensing specific to special ed now, like there, if people are being asked to do, if they have a tier 2 license and if they are being asked to do any due process paperwork, they're supposed to, the way that the statute and the rule, they're supposed to be provided with quality professional development to support that work. And I mean, I think in some buildings and in some places that was that quality support and training was provided, and in some places, like there just wasn't anybody identified to do it, and so I think Bonnie fielded questions from someone who said, like, I'm being expected to do 5, and I to do 5 assessments and or to do 5 IEPs, and I haven't had any training on how to do any of it. I'm completely overwhelmed. I don't know what to do. And didn't also at the same time didn't realize that with the type of license that she had, there shouldn't be an expectation for her to do that unless she was receiving support. So, it took a little bit to straighten it out. But I do think, I mean, maybe that could be part of it, is that people who are on a tier 2 license, like that is a way that we have been able to fill some special ed positions, like supporting those people through doing the work that they need to do and in order to finish licensing. That could also be part of that, rather than people saying, I tried this for a year and it's overwhelming and I'm done. And there has been a year of, investment on the part of the district and the program manager and, et cetera. So, yeah, the committee makes a lot of sense rather than.
I think that's our response for the day.
Okay. Our response is we were in here talking through the flex time proposal until we had, I think it was like 12 minutes by the time we got back to the room. And then we just did more hashing about the flex time MOU. So we also don't have any responses other than you and I can figure out a time to see if we can hash some things out so that we can bring them forward when we meet. But our next meeting is coming up really fast too, so we don't have a lot of in between time. So are we gonna adjourn at 3:52? Okay. Thank you.